It's that happy time of day. Here I am, your humble host, Theron Peck, Mr. Grass, going live on Thursday. You'll probably notice I've got a safari shirt on, and you know why that is? Because it's been hot. Who likes all the humidity we've been having? No, not at all, and lawns haven't either. But we're going to get into more of that later. First of all, I've introduced myself, Theron Peck, Mr. Grass. I want to thank you all for joining me today on another lovely Thursday. I think every Thursday's been really good weather, so maybe that's kind of something good going on. I want to tell you a little bit about Chippers. If you look behind me, chippersinc.com, it's our website. We're about everything green outside, everything green. Plants, trees, turf, a lot of resources, a lot of videos. We are the absolute experts on so many things. And you know why? It's because of the people that we work with, that I get to work with. So check us out, check out some of the people, check out our bios, really great. Speaking of bios, I want to give a really big, I'm close now, shout out to Larry Fay, one of Chipper's Turf Division employees, who just achieved the same level of certification as I have in turf. And what that level of certification is called supervisory, which means other people can work underneath of you. It's the highest level you can get. You have to take a really long exam. It takes 2 or 3 hours. And then the best part is you go in front of a board of the state and they give you an oral exam. And I'll tell you what, that's a lot to take in. So kudos to Larry, who just got his license last week. If you see him, give him props. It's just another reason why we know our stuff and we're great at it, and we'd love to do it. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on with lawns. My first 2 questions actually, and I didn't plan this, actually coincidentally deal with some of the slides I'm going to show you. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to get in some color slides here. So again, be gentle. We're going to share my screen, and I'm going to do some. We're going to do some slide sharing here. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is one of my questions is crabgrass, evil crabgrass. If you look at this slide, you're going to see all the nice dark green grass. We call that the good grass of your lawn. And we have these patches. You can see all these patches of limey green grass. Well, one of my questions from Franklin, thank you, Franklin, for signing up this morning and sending this question, doing this on the fly, is drought killed my turf, and they are now filling it with crabgrass. Well, that would be kind of a picture like this, where areas have browned out, and in this case, you have the limey green crabgrass that's germinating up through that. What's the best day to deal with the problem now, the best way? Well, we have 2 types of sprays that deal with the plant as an adult, which is different from the pre-emergent, which is done in the springtime before the plant even germinates or you can even see it. So there is a spray right now that I would recommend if your lawn has crabgrass like this picture, or even worse. I've seen much worse than this. We can spray that for you, and that way it'll retard the plant, it'll knock it back, kind of turn it purple, then it'll turn brown. And the advantage of doing that is you'll have a cleaner looking lawn, and also each plant puts out thousands of seeds. So you don't want all of these crabgrass plants to put out all of that seed, because it adds to the seed bank for the future. So thank you for that question, Franklin. Hopefully that helps answer that question. Now we're going to do another slide here. And we're going to talk about ground ivy. Barbara asked about ground ivy. And I'm going to show you. Oh, I think just about everybody has ground ivy. And if you don't, you might get it. It's kind of like catching a cold. So Barbara says, how do you get rid of creeping Charlie, otherwise known as ground ivy? Well, that's a great question. So this is what ground ivy looks like. It's low to the ground, and it likes to spread and creep low to the ground. Maybe that's why they call it Creeping Charlie, because it just kind of moves along nice and low, and it doesn't grow straight up like, say, a dandelion flowers and so forth. So this is Creeping Charlie. It's it is in the top 10 most difficult weeds to control. And the reason for that is if you look at the leaves, they're very thick and they have a waxy cuticle on them, a covering. So when you spray a weed control product to try to thin it out, it's really hard to get through that natural defense mechanism. So there's a few products that we have that are especially designed to thin out Creeping Charlie. And the best time to do that is the fall. We can do up to 4 sprays with our organic product. It's an iron compound. And speaking of that, I want to show you what Creeping Charlie looks like after it's been sprayed once by our organic weed control. And this is what it looks like. Okay, so you're going to notice the edges. It's a little chlorotic. It's dying back. It's thinning out. It's not as nearly vigorous looking. You got blackening on the edges where the product is really trying to do its job. And this is after one spray. So again, depending on how much of Creeping Charlie you have in your lawn, you could go anywhere from at least 1, and you see that hasn't killed it yet, so it's definitely going to need another one. I would recommend anywhere from 2 to 4. And again, September and October, those are the months to control Creeping Charlie. And we do have conventional products to that in terms of controlling the basics of that, in terms of really reducing it out. We have conventional and organic products. So thank you very much for that question. And now we're going to move on here. Got to get back to the screen here. And let's see, we're going to stop sharing the screen. Pardon me while I clean my screen up here and get back to normal. Okay. Now we're going to get into a lot of other questions, okay? And I really thank you. We're going to open up the Q&A here. I think we've got a Q&A. So let's do an anonymous attendee question right now. Referring back to your first crabgrass answer, if I spray for the crabgrass, won't I then just have bare patches? How do I get the good grass to grow? Super question. Yeah, you will have a bare patch, but what you're doing is you're preparing it for top dressing with compost or loam, and then you can seed on top of that. If you let the crabgrass keep growing, it's going to get bigger and bigger, and the crabgrass can actually get into hubcap size plants. So spraying it will thin it out, and then it's going to give you a clean surface to add about 1 inch or 1/2 inch of topsoil or compost or both, and then you can seed. So that's why you would want to do that. Also, the weather is kind of breaking right now, so that kind of a project could be done pretty much any time from now to early October for the best results. Thank you for that question, Mr. Anonymous. Jim has a great question. Jim says, I have large areas of dead lawn. Much of it is from the winter. Wow, that's a long time ago, Jim. And now they're much larger. I bet they are. What to do? Well, you know, again, you're probably talking about a renovation depending upon the size of these dead areas. Lawns can be affected with winter kill and snow mold and ice damage, especially if you snow blow or walk over these areas. And we have really cold weather, and there's not snow to protect it. Snow acts as insulation on turf. And so if it's exposed, it's more likely to dry out, desiccate, and when you walk on it, you're basically crushing the plant, and that can cause damage as well. So you're probably looking at some kind of a renovation, Jim. To what extent, I'd have to look at it to give you more information on that. But again, the best time to do lawn renovations is the fall, and I've touched on this in past weeks, and that is because the ground is warm. We generally get some rainfall, and you're not dealing with crabgrass that's dying and annual weeds that are dying. In the spring, the soil is cold, and it's really hard for the grass seeds to germinate. And also crabgrass and annual weeds are germinating in the spring. So the fall is the best time to do renovations. Great question. Kathy asked, something is digging holes in my lawn. Sounds like a mystery. early spring and the summer. So there's a lot of critters that are out of my purview, but that I do run into. We have chipmunk holes. Chipmunks have been doing really great lately, and they tend to make little holes in lawns. And also we have voles with a V. They are herbivores. They're like a field mouse, and they have shallow tunnels, and they run generally out of mulch beds, planting beds. They like to eat roots, grass, perennials. And the best way to try to get rid of voles with a V is to use a mouse trap with peanut butter, or you can use baits as well. Moles with an M, they're carnivorous. They like to eat earthworms, beetles, grubs, all kinds of things like that. They make huge volcano mounds, and they're usually the easiest to determine. I'd have to say that I've seen all three of these things digging. Chippers does have a mole bait that we can use to control moles, but unfortunately, we don't control chipmunks, and we don't control voles with a V. So that's probably what you have digging in your lawn, and they can be pesty. I don't know what it is with voles of late, but I think field mice are just going crazy out there. I see them everywhere. I never saw this like, say, 5-10 years ago. Climate change, folks, climate change. Claren, can new sod survive in sand over a septic tank? That's a great question. In theory, yes, if you are irrigating it enough. Sod, bluegrass mixes tend to be voracious feeders of nitrogen and fertilizer, upwards of 3 or 4 pounds per year per 1,000 square feet. And, I know that's kind of a technical thing that I'm throwing out there, but just let me tell you, that's at least 3 to 5 fertilizer visits evenly spread over the season. So that's a lot of fertilizer. The big thing with sod being on sand is that it's going to dry out a lot quicker. Sod is prone to different kinds of patch diseases, and when it dries out, especially if it's mown short, under 2 inches in the summer, you're going to predispose it to all kinds of disease issues. So it's really not the best option. If you could supplement that soil with a couple of inches of topsoil or compost, that would really be the way to go. And also, if you had irrigation, that would be sweet as well. So we got another couple of loving the live questions. Loving it. How long do I have to wait after crabgrass herbicide before I can seed? It depends upon the product. Most you can seed nearly immediately. Now, the products that chippers use, you can seed within a week or two at the very latest. Theoretically, it could be done the next day. The reason you'd want to wait is so that the plants start to break down and die first, so that you got a better seeding surface. Again, I'm not roaming the halls of Home Depot or any other named hardware store, so I don't know if you can get the kind of products that we use, but the products that we do use, you can seed right away, which is a bonus. Great question. What are skunks and crows going after in my lawn? Definitely buried treasure, okay? I don't know what you got buried. I'm just kidding. It's a joke. Skunks generally like to go after earthworms, ants, and grubs. Skunks and raccoons and even turkeys and bears I've seen tear up lawns. And they have a very good, especially crows, they have a really good sense of what's going on underneath the ground. So that could be what's going on. In order to determine if you have a grub problem, you can get down on your hands and knees and you can pull at the turf, kind of like pull it up, like grab its tuft, just like, all right, let's go. And you kind of, if it pulls up easily and you dig around in the first couple of inches, the first top inch or two, you're going to find some grubs in there. So they're going to be little crescent white shaped little suckers. And if you've got that, then you have a grub issue, which should probably be treated. And so that could be what's going on. Anonymous. Great question. Thank you so much for that. Back to the regular questions. Alice asks, I have lots of crabgrass. There is a lot of crabgrass this year. And before I answer the rest of this question or read it, the reason that there's a lot of crabgrass is because it's a heat-loving plant. And even if you had crabgrass control, the product with all the high heat and the 90-degree days that we've had, it breaks it down. And by the time you hit August, it only lasts about 3 months, and that's under ideal circumstances. And that's also if you have a really healthy lawn. So if you've got your lawn's a little sketchy, little thin, a little sandy. You got bare areas, you got bare patches, kind of like what I showed you earlier. You're really set up to having crabgrass pop up and grow aggressively, especially the way it's been over the past 2-3 months, with it being in the 90s. And then throw a little drought in there. You got yourself crabgrass heaven going on. And again, if you do have a lot of crabgrass, it's really in your best interest to try to have it controlled and spray it and knock it back so it doesn't put down a lot of seeds. So again, Alice, to finish your question, after removing a large area of crabgrass, I take it you pulled it up. I know some folks can do that if it's a smaller area. If you've got an acre, probably not out there harvesting crabgrass. Before we reseed, what substance can be raked into the soil? Not exactly sure what you're talking about in terms of raking in a product. There's really no need to rake in any kind of a substance. That would be something that you would do next spring. There's really nothing you would need or want to do at this time of the year to put into your soil or on the soil, especially if you're going to do a renovation or any kind of seeding work. You can always supplement your existing soil if it's sandy with, obviously, and I've talked about this before, compost or topsoil. Also, a lot of lawns get compacted with use. Also, dry weather and the soil can be hardened sometimes. So aerating and overseeding a lawn anytime from now till early October will benefit any lawn whatsoever. A lot of sports folks know that aerating the lawn several times a year really helps. The biggest problem with lawns is losing that air pocket. And so the roots don't do as well. And believe it or not, they have to breathe just like us. So if there's no air pocket in the soil and it's a clay or compacted, your grass tends to thin out. Just look at paths along colleges and where the people scoot through fields. There's a reason that there's lines of pretty much dirt paths. That's because it's from compaction. So just a little something there in terms of that. I've got another Q&A, Francis. This is a good one. In light of the extreme heat, yeah, no kidding. So I've got my safari outfit on. Can I water the lawn more often, presuming 2 inches of water at each watering once a week? Will it make a difference for the lawn? Any concerns with twice a week? Watering. If anybody is going to water, it's best to do it infrequently and deeply, in general. Okay, and I touched upon this a little bit last week in terms of frequency. So in an ideal situation, and if you can water your lawn, I know a lot of folks have watering bans or you're being billed for it and you don't want a $600 water bill at the end of August. You generally want to water your lawn for about a half an hour to 45 minutes per area, every other day or every 3 days, not once a week. Most soils do have a sandy component to them, so they're really not going to have that moisture retention quality like a clay would. Clay is the finest particle that we have, silt and clay, and it holds moisture quite well. So those types of lawns don't need water as much as, say, a sandy or an open exposed lawn. And then to throw in another variable, you've got slopes, you've got buried objects, you've got septic covers, patios, driveways, where things are superheating on the side. That's where the crabgrass is germinating, and that's where you need to address it. Any amount of watering is good, especially in droughts, to keep the crown, which is the base of the plant, way down at the ground, alive during a drought. And again, to touch on frequency, or actually time, you want to not water late in the day, like after 6 or 7 o'clock. And I touched on this last week. You don't want to have that lawn stay wet overnight, especially when it's in the 90s. I think it was 71 or 74 degrees yesterday at 6 a.m. It was crazy. That is disease haven. That's brown patch, pythium, summer patch. All of these diseases that love that hot, humid weather overnight. So if you're watering your lawn at 7, you're all happy and you're like, I'm doing a good job. And I'm so, I got out there and I did it. Well, you're setting your lawn up for a little bit of death and destruction overnight. The best time to do it is early in the morning, anywhere from 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to the late morning. And again, watering in the middle of the day will not burn your lawn. It'll just evaporate and cost you more water. So Hopefully that answers your question, Francis, in terms of watering and irrigation. So that brings us to another question. Kathy is asking me, when should you fertilize your lawn? Well, generally speaking, you want to fertilize your lawn when the lawn is growing or needs help. So spring and the fall, if you're going to do any kind of fertilizing, becomes the most important times. The spring, you're getting top growth and you're helping the lawn get out of winter stress, that being snow, mold, perhaps rain, winter damage, ice damage, things that I kind of touched on a little earlier. And you're trying to jumpstart the recovery in the springtime. Now in the fall, you want to fertilize your lawn because it's going to store up carbohydrates. It's like having a good pasta dinner on a cold winter's night. You want to give that lawn a lot of energy. It's in a recovery mode, especially out of the summer that we've been having, and that's going to really help your lawn prepare for wintertime. Also, if you're doing seeding or renovating work, it'll also help the new grass. And generally speaking, I think that the best frequency of fertilizing in the fall would be 1 to 2 times, once in September and once in October. Hopefully that answers your question. I also recommend fertilizers that are blended in terms of organic matter, so that you can always be improving your soil. Chipper's main granular fertilizer is 50% organic, and it's always adding to the soil quality. So if you can pick out some fertilizer that has some organic component, you're doing yourself a double favor. Thank you for that question, Kathy. Anonymous. I love Anonymous. I'm going to need one of those masks with Anonymous when I answer those questions. What are the 3 most important treatments I can do this fall? Oh boy, that's a wide open question. A lot of that's going to really depend upon what you've done in the past and the condition of your lawn. If I had to talk broad brush, I would say aeration and overseeding, or just aeration if your lawn is in good shape. Again, it's the best time to reduce compaction. You're not going to be getting the kind of weed issues that you would get with aerating in the springtime. And it's just a really great process. And also you're adding new, better grasses into your lawn when you overseed. Chippers has 5 different blends that I have spec'd out that go all the way from deep shade, all the way to drought conditions and sun, to just a regular mix. So again, aeration and overseeding, I'd have to say, is probably number 1. Fertilizing would be number 2. And if you haven't limed your lawn, either a magnesium or a calcium-based lime, which we have both of those. Those are also great components to help not only adjust the soil pH, but also add some humic acid, add calcium or magnesium, or both, that are very helpful micronutrients. For those of you that know a fertilizer bag, you've got the NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Those are the 3 numbers. Well, magnesium and calcium are the micronutrients that turf adores, just like your grandchildren. They just adore calcium and magnesium. So lime would be another thing. In terms of some other treatments, adding compost tea, seaweed, doing perhaps a soil restoration service where you're top dressing your lawn, either yourself or Chippers has a soil restoration service that helps reduce drought stress that we just started actually this year. That's another product or process that you could do to prepare your lawn for the winter. So hopefully that answers that, Anonymous. So again, the Q&A is open, and that wraps up the questions that I have at the moment, unless anybody else has any more questions. I want to give you the tip of the week. What do I see most often? Well, a lot of things. What I see during the year is a lot of dull mower blades. A dull mower blade will shred the end of your grass when it is cut. It will leave a white tint. It will leave the end of the grass ragged. It will allow for moisture loss. It will not heal over as quickly. It will just look worse than if the blade was sharp. So my tip of the week really is, if you haven't sharpened your blade on your mower since you got it, or ever, or maybe last year, sharpen your mower blade. You're doing yourself a disservice by mowing your lawn with a dull mower blade. You're going to predispose it also to diseases like red thread and other things where the pathogen's more likely going to get into the end of the leaf blade because it doesn't have a chance to heal over. It's just like a jagged cut versus a clean cut. If you were cut, one heals over better than the other. So that's my tip of the week. I want to thank you for watching. I really do. Please tell your friends. This is kind of an organic based thing that we're doing here. We're just trying to get the word out. I am Mr. Grass. I am the expert on lawns. I think I've met up to 6 of you over the past week, and it was an absolute pleasure talking with you, coming to your lawn, helping give you tips. Even if you're not taking any of our services, that's not the point here. The point here is education, and we are all about your life outside. I hope you enjoyed the show. I really enjoy this every Thursday morning. It's a little odd talking into a camera, but I know you're out there. I can see you. I can see you. So I want to thank you again for watching. Tell all your friends. You can email me directly at turf@chippersinc.com. Check out our website, chippersinc.com, and see what we got in there. There's a lot of good stuff. Also, all of my past webinars are recorded. And if you go to the resources tab at Chippers, it'll take you to YouTube and you can watch the past ones if you missed it. Or share it with a friend. I don't know, have a cup of coffee. Maybe you're drinking coffee right now. I need a cup. So I got to go outside. I got to go. I really thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again next week. Have a great Thursday and Friday. I think the weather is going to be spectacular for seeding. We'll see you again. Thanks so much.